It has no outside, so you can't appeal to something outside the universe to constrain the universe's freedom. So you might say, well, Leo, the universe as a whole is constrained by the laws of physics because there's a certain gravitational constant. There are other physical constants that scientists talk about. There's a sort of a fine-tuning problem that scientists talk about. And, the physical laws and maybe even the logical laws of the universe are so established as to constrain what it can be and how it can work. But see, if you say that, you're not thinking deeply enough. Because, again, now see what you're doing is you're defining the universe as something that's separate from, distinct from the physical or logical laws which are constraining it. In this case, again, you're creating a sort of a duality and you're not seeing that you're creating this. But my notion of a universe, the proper notion of a universe, includes everything, including the physical laws and the logical laws. So now you have to ask yourself, are the physical and logical laws themselves free? What is constraining them? What is defining them? What's holding them in place, so to speak? And if you say, well, there's some sort of metalogical or metaphysical laws which are holding it in place, you're just pushing the problem down one level. You're not really addressing the issue. You have to see that your metalogical laws and your metaphysical laws are also going to be all part of what we're calling universe. The universe has nothing outside of it, no other to itself. It's a unity. And when you realize that, then what you realize is the universe must control itself. The universe must define itself and set its own limits. If the universe is setting its own limits, then truly, in the absolute sense, the universe is free to be however it wants. Because there's nothing outside the universe to tell the universe how it has to be. There are no policemen or judges outside the universe. This is such a radical notion that there is not even anyone outside the universe who could judge whether the universe exists or not. In other words, for the universe to tell itself that it exists, or rather, for the universe to exist, is nothing other than for it to tell itself that it exists. Because there's nobody to check whether the universe is being honest with itself. You see? The universe is self-defining, self-creating, self-constraining. But if it's self-defining and self-creating and self-constraining, that means it can define, create, or constrain itself however it wants, including having no constraints whatsoever. In other words, the universe is totally free. Free in the absolute sense. Freedom with a capital F. You might say, but Leo, what does all this have to do with free will? So here's what my recent awakening revealed to me, specifically on the issue of will and what it is. If you become infinitely conscious that you are the entire universe and your identity, your finite human identity, expands to occupy the infinite scope of the whole universe, what you will realize is that since the universe is completely sovereign and has no outside, it imagines all of its own constraints and it defines itself and its identity as the universe or as something less than the universe, like a human or a kangaroo or a table or a chair or whatever. And as such, from that highest level of infinite consciousness, the universe is an infinite mind which wills itself into existence. In other words, everything that happens in the universe is the universe's will. Physical, material manifestation is the crystallization of the universe's will. Will with a capital W. What I'm saying is extremely profound. I'm saying that all material objects are identical to will. This is a radical idea. Because ordinarily, us humans have thought of will as something that human minds possess. And human bodies possess will. We might say the human body or an animal body possesses will, but a rock does not possess will. A chair is not capable of will. And so on. We don't usually ascribe will to physical objects. We ascribe will to ourselves. But you see, that's what this sneaky ego mind is doing. Because the ego mind's function, its whole reason for existence is to believe that you, this limited finite identity, has control over its environment to some degree so that you can manipulate that environment to survive. You see? But again, just like we do with love, we confuse our human notions of will with a universal metaphysical will that the entire universe possesses. So humans mistake their personal preferences, likes and dislikes of material objects, and they call that love. If you like it, you call it love. If you don't like it, you call it hate, the opposite of love. And we think that that's all that love boils down to, is these kinds of biased emotions on behalf of living organisms. But that's not really what love is. I've discussed love in depth in other episodes. Go check out my episodes called What is Love? Part 1, Part 2. That explains that. I won't recapitulate that here. But see, an analogous problem is happening with will. What's happening is that universal will, the will of the entire universe, is being severely limited when an ego mind grabs hold of it and only considers it in a biased manner in terms of what is my will, what is my portion of the universe's will. That's really what you're concerned about as a human, as an ego. You don't care about the will of the entire universe. You don't even care about the will of other beings and inanimate objects. You only care about your personal will, because all you care about is how to manipulate reality long enough to survive. That's all you care about, because of how you've defined yourself as a finite human. If your self-definition is very, very finite, by necessity, what that results in is a crippling of the universe's infinite will into that little portion of will that you think you have as an ego mind. You can manipulate small local portions of the universe by turning the steering wheel in your car, changing the radio station, things like that. Making a few decisions here or there. And you feel like you're like a leaf blowing around in a giant hurricane. It's hard for you to control yourself. Or maybe a better example here would be not a leaf, but more like a bird. Imagine a little hummingbird in the middle of a giant hurricane. It can control where it's flying, but its ability to control where it flies is severely limited because the forces of the larger hurricane are completely overpowering the forces of its wings. And so this poor little hummingbird